You are bleeding out right now, and you do not even feel the blade. Every single day, quiet pieces of your dignity, your focus, and your future are stripped away. You call it love. You call it partnership. But you are walking blindfolded into a slaughterhouse. Look at your bank account. Look at your shattered sleep. Look at your hollowed-out ambition. You think you are protecting her. You think you are the hero of your own domestic tragedy. The truth is far darker. You are an expendable asset in a game you were never taught how to play. They told you to be vulnerable. They told you to open your heart without reservation. And the moment you complied, the trap snapped shut with absolute, cold precision. You feel the weight of exhaustion settling deep into your marrow, draining your vital force. Every concession you made was recorded. Every weakness you showed was cataloged and weaponized. You are losing your grip on reality because the narrative you were fed is an absolute lie. They want you docile. They want you compliant. They want you bankrupt of spirit. Every time you apologize for your own power, you dig your own psychological grave. You are standing on shifting sand, pretending it is solid granite, smiling while you sink. The illusions are fracturing. The fog is clearing, and what remains is terrifyingly stark. You gave them your absolute loyalty, expecting reciprocity in a world governed by raw utility. Utility is the only currency they recognize. The moment your utility drops, you vanish. You feel the sting of betrayal, not because they are evil, but because you refuse to see reality. They operate on instincts older than civilization itself, completely indifferent to your modern ideals. You brought poetry to a transaction. You brought eternity to a temporary lease. Listen closely, because the noise in your head is the sound of your illusions dying. You cannot negotiate with biology. You cannot charm your way past the laws of nature. Every ounce of pain you have endured in relationships was designed to teach you one brutal lesson. You were built for conquest, for sovereignty, for creation, not to be an emotional insurance policy. They have mastered the art of extracting your strength while making you feel like the aggressor. Your empathy has been turned into a leash, guiding you wherever they want you to pull. Stop apologizing for seeing through the veil. Stop playing the polite victim in your own downfall. The comfort you crave is a narcotic, and the price is your absolute independence. The countdown has already begun. The structure is collapsing. Will you look or look away? Prepare yourself, because what you are about to discover will destroy every lie you were fed. Your pain is real. The exhaustion you feel in your chest is not a malfunction. It is a signal. For years you blamed yourself. You thought you weren't romantic enough, weren't patient enough, weren't enough. That was the first trick. They made you internalize the systemic failure of modern human pairing. The game was rigged before you drew your first breath, designed to siphon your focus into endless validation loops. Society profits from your confusion. A man who understands his own power is ungovernable. They feed you fairy tales of unconditional affection while extracting your resources down to the last drop. You were conditioned to feel guilty for setting boundaries, as if your sovereignty was a crime. Every time you sacrificed your mission for their comfort, you traded your future for a temporary illusion. The systems around you, legal, social, and cultural, institutionalize this unequal exchange. You are treated as a utility provider, valued only for your output, your protection, and your provisions. When the provisions stop, the affection vanishes like smoke in a hurricane. This is not an accident. This is the baseline operating system of human mating markets. Once you see the code running beneath the surface, the spell loses its hypnotic hold over you. The pain of awakening is severe, but it is infinitely preferable to dying a slow death of pleasant delusions. Your openness was weaponized against you because you assumed others operated by your code of honor. Honor is an individual burden, not a universal law. You projected your integrity onto a void. Now that the curtain has been ripped away, you can finally face the architect of your suffering. The architect is not them. The architect is your own refusal to accept reality as it actually is. Forgive yourself for not knowing, but never forgive yourself for remaining blind once the light hits. Drop this in the comments. Illusion dissolves before truth. The systems designed to keep you weak rely entirely on your continued ignorance of basic power dynamics. Every emotional outburst you tolerated was a test of your containment. You failed, and you paid the price. Containment is the hallmark of sovereign power. When you leak emotion, you hand over the keys. They tested your limits because instinct commanded them to find the edges of your container. When the container held, they respected it. When it fractured, they dismantled you. You are rebuilding that container right now, forged in the cold realization of human nature. No more apologies. No more emotional tax paid for sins you did not commit. The matrix of domestic comfort is a cage with velvet bars. You are stepping out. As you step out into the cold air of reality, the master of this dark philosophy waits in the shadows. Arthur Schopenhauer did not write for the comfortable. He wrote for survivors. Enter Arthur Schopenhauer, the most feared pessimist in Western intellectual history. He stared into the darkest recesses of human motivation and refused to blink. While other thinkers spun comforting fairy tales about human nature, he stripped away the veneer. He understood that behind every grand romantic gesture lies the blind, unyielding urge of the will. The will drives us, blinds us, and ultimately destroys us in its relentless quest for self-perpetuation. He examined the dynamics between the sexes with a cold, clinical detachment that scandalized Europe. He saw what men refused to see, because the cost of admission to that truth is too high for the weak. Most men prefer the sweet poison of delusion over the bitter medicine of absolute clarity. You are here because you are done with poison. You are ready for the medicine. Listen to his exact words, written in his infamous essay on women, echoing across the centuries. Consider his exact declaration, unsoftened by modern sensibilities or polite diplomatic fictions. Here is the core truth he laid bare for anyone brave enough to read it without flinching. Women are directly adapted to act as the nurses and teachers of our early childhood by the fact that they are themselves childish, frivolous, and short-sighted. In a word, they remain all their lives grown-up children, that sort of intermediate stage between the child and the man who is the man proper. Let that statement burn away every remaining illusion you harbor about romantic equality. He was not insulting. He was describing biological machinery operating exactly as nature engineered it. Nature cares nothing for your happiness, your fulfillment, or your modern egalitarian fantasies. Nature cares only for propagation, survival, and the endless continuation of the species. And in that grand design, men and women play vastly different, often conflicting roles. When you try to force equality where nature created asymmetry, disaster is the only outcome. You suffered because you expected logical reciprocity from a creature driven entirely by emotional instinct. Expecting logic from instinct is like expecting a hurricane to respect property lines. The fault was never theirs for being what they are. The fault was yours for misreading the nature of the beast. Now that Schopenhauer has handed you the lens, we must examine the tactical lessons that follow. These lessons are your armor in a world that seeks to disarm and consume you. Pay attention. Your survival depends on mastering every single principle that follows. Principle 1. Affection is conditional upon utility, never upon your intrinsic worth. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. Let us step directly into the mechanics of power, starting with the first great law. You recognize this from your own life when you lost your job or status and watched warmth instantly evaporate. This happens because emotional attachment in pairing is fundamentally rooted in resource security and social standing. Starting today, never rely on emotional loyalty. Secure your position through sovereign self-reliance and absolute autonomy. Principle 2. The weaponization of your vulnerability is guaranteed upon disclosure. You know this from the argument where your deepest insecurities, shared in confidence, were hurled back like daggers. This happens because in moments of conflict, instinct overrides discretion, using any available ammunition for dominance. Starting today, keep your inner citadel locked. Share your weaknesses with no one, absolutely no one. Principle 3. Hypergamy never sleeps. It merely calculates the next upward migration. You recognize this when you see a partner upgrade their circle, the moment your momentum slows by even a fraction. This happens because biological programming compels continual optimization of offspring security and resource access. Starting today, outpace your own reflection daily so that your value always exceeds any temptation to stray. Drop this in the comments. Power belongs to the detached. Principle 4. Emotional drama is manufactured to test your frame and drain your psychological reserves. You know this from late-night arguments over trivial matters that somehow spiral into total existential crises. This happens because testing your boundaries is the subconscious method used to determine if you are still strong enough to lead. Starting today, respond to emotional storms with absolute, unshakable silence. Do not feed the fire. Principle 5. Guilt is the primary currency used to purchase your submission. You recognize this when you feel an overwhelming compulsion to apologize simply for wanting time for your own ambitions. This happens because independence is perceived as a threat to the total immersion required by emotional dependence. Starting today, audit every pang of guilt you feel and trace it directly back to the manipulation that birthed it. Principle 6. Peace is always purchased at the price of constant, unyielding readiness. You know this from the fragile calm that settles over a home only when you concede every point of contention. This happens because submission is mistaken for peace by those who wish to avoid conflict at the cost of your sovereignty. Starting today, embrace healthy friction. True sovereignty requires standing your ground regardless of the weather. Principle 7. The moment you cease to be a challenge, you cease to exist as a priority. You recognize this when total compliance leads directly to total indifference and emotional abandonment. This happens because human nature values that which is hard to attain and easily dismisses that which is guaranteed. Starting today, remain relentlessly unpredictable, sovereign, and anchored to your own supreme. Drop this in the comments. The crown is heavy for the weak. The old you is dead, buried beneath the weight of your former delusions, your compliance, and your manufactured guilt. You feel the ashes of your past self blowing away in the freezing wind of absolute reality. You are a weapon pointed at your own future. No hesitation, no second guessing, no emotional anchors dragging you down into the mire. You belong to no one, not to the expectations of society, not to the emotional demands of domestic tyrants, not to your own weakness. The illusion has dissolved, the truth remains, and you are standing unyielding in its light. Drop this in the comments. Sovereignty is silent. The path ahead is narrow, cold, and entirely yours to conquer. Subscribe to this channel only if you possess the courage to walk the path of absolute truth. This is not a community for the weak or the nostalgic. This is an order for the unconquered. Make your choice. Remain asleep in the comforting embrace of illusion, or wake up to sovereign power. If you take this crown, you can never put it down. Are you ready for the weight? Answer this in the comments and let it haunt your thoughts for days. If absolute emotional detachment is the price of sovereign power, are you willing to pay it?